If you're caught in one of the galaxy's hives of scum and villainy, and the hairs on the back of your neck begin to stand up, it'll be because of fear, and only then will you know. Then you'll realise you've entered the lair of the Gekko. This week, we're joined by Dominic Pace. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Hello to all your listeners out there.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast, Dominic. Do you know what? I've just got to say, I've got an intro that you are known as Gekko the Bounty Hunter, but I know you very recently as Guy in Superstore.
Yes. We've had a 25-plus year career, some nice little roles here and there, some not so nice roles. I ended up actually taking one for the team, doing a B shark movie years ago called Megalodon. But
I've seen that.
It's sort of a blue-collar actor to where I've taken so many different opportunities. But just like you gentlemen and so many of your listeners, a lifelong Star Wars fan, and this was absolutely a dream come true.
Well, I heard, mate. So just for some background info, just in case someone has never heard of Gekko the Bounty Hunter from the Mandalorian, can we have a little background info for someone who's new to this bounty hunting world?
As most Star Wars fans know, this would be completely insignificant, even if it was a Marvel or DC project. There's a magic. I was just watching somebody doing a card back to Wilbur Hood from Empire Strikes Back, the gentleman who literally was running with an ice cream maker for less than 2 seconds. It's only significant. I mean, I guess you would equate it also to Empire Strikes Back, to where the original 6 bounty hunters were only on screen for probably less than 1 minute. That's the magic of Star Wars. That's the detail that Lucas has done and now passed on to Filoni and Favreau. The amount of detail, I was in makeup for 2 hours, just literally for the same thing, less than 1 minute screen time in episode 1 and 3 of season 1 of Mandalorian. There's just a special, I think, attachment to the mysteriousness of the side characters, specifically because they pay so much attention to detail in this universe, almost to a point to where they make it real. The character, I was just a lifelong Star Wars fan. I'm extremely enthusiastic as a fan, and for this opportunity that over the last couple of years, this character, which I think, again, would probably be insignificant if it wasn't for, I think, my own motivation as well, and also just the support of the fans, just started gaining a lot of steam over the last couple of years, almost on a smaller scale, similar to Boba, to where, again, he was just sort of, in the animation of the Christmas special, and then, obviously, he was featured for about a minute or two in Empire Strikes Back. But it's just amazing what the Star Wars universe can do, and I can't tell you how honored I am, how humbled I am, and how excited I am for hopefully the future of Gekko and many more live action and hopefully animated projects there as well.
Oh, I hear that, my friend. Well, I know you've probably spoken about this ad nauseum for the last year and a bit about how you got on into the Mandalorian, but just for the benefit of our listeners, yes. Now, did you have to? Did you have to audition for the role? Did they call you up? What was the process? And when they did say, "Oh, by the way, Dominic, you're in the Mando," how was that?
Sure. So a blue-collar actor, literally just grit and grind. I know in England they have a lot of working class. So for me, it's not about, the Hollywood lifestyle of driving a Mercedes with the big, going to all the red carpets, etc. This is it's a tough job where you have to roll up your sleeves, take all different levels of work. One of the levels of work that I've taken is prosthetic work. It's not the greatest talent in the world, but at the same time, you do have to have a certain amount of patience because sometimes you're in the chair for over 2 hours. At the same time, no attitude, no ego, and also at the same time, experience. They like people with experience. I had the fortune of being with Hugh Jackman for about 3 months. I doubled and stood in for Frankenstein in 2002 on Van Helsing, opposite the lovely Kate Beckinsale as well. And that originally was the first time I met with Legacy Effects. Years later, I ended up working on Bright with Will Smith as one of the orcs. I was also Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and this ended up being, I was called in by a second team casting office for just a simple makeup test. I happened to meet with a gentleman by the name of Brian Sipe. He's probably one of the most talented prosthetic gentlemen in the entire world, not even so much the country. They rely on legacy effects for things where they're not going to go to CGI, and he could not have done a better job. He headed up Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. We started talking. I had no idea. I was in the chair for 6 hours. He was experimenting on my head. I think it definitely was a plus to have a bald head because he was able to play around with a lot of the prosthetics. There was no mention of Star Wars whatsoever, but a very mysterious thing happened during lunch. One of the assistants said, "Would you like to walk around the warehouse?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So I'm walking around, and it was almost similar to episode 2, where Kenobi is sort of taking a tour of the stormtroopers and the clones, the clone army about to take off. And there was all these Star Wars props and statues and everything else in the back warehouse. And I said, my God, I said, what's going on here? I literally could not put 2 and 2 together, because I thought, Star Wars was just, focused on just the episodes, and that's it. There's no way there's going to be any sort of live action in any way. It's just, and everything that Star Wars has done is pretty much in England and Australia. And the gentleman just told me, he said, "Oh, no, they're just working on another video game. So this is a lot of their models just specifically for that." So 2 weeks later, I get a phone call.
Naughty boy.
To go in for a project called Huckleberry as a nickname. And it just for a makeup test. And this is the first time in my career and I had a makeup test on a day that I was not filming, and I said, "My God, whatever this is, this budget has got to be off the charts, because call union actors in on a day that's actually not being used for the screen is quite an investment for the production company." So my hands started going slightly numb when I saw the NDA agreement where it said LucasFilm at the top of the page, and then I was brought into a wardrobe room. A gentleman by the name of Stephen Porro, just the most interesting look you can imagine. If you look him up, it's as if you were to, have the wardrobe done for Star Wars. This is the man that you would have just by sight. He's just an interesting looking gentleman, and so extremely talented. Any Star Wars fan, once you walked into that room, would have been able to put it together that this was a Lucasfilm project, Star Wars universe project. That's where, again, our heart started pounding a little more. We get sent into another room, and there were 3 options of wardrobe saying Dominic Pace, Bounty Hunter. And right then and there, Brian Sipe came up the stairs, and he said, there are a couple options masked, but I want to save Dominic for the most extensive makeup. He had so much patience. In the chair, there were 25 bounty hunters, and I want to give you the most extensive makeup for the 2 episodes there. And I was just beside myself. The first memories that come in is really going back to being 5 years old with my 12 original figures, and inside, playing with my Cantina playset and putting the blasters inside the hands of the figures and feeling that myself for the first time on a blaster that I got to choose on my own. It was just the most amazing 2 weeks you can possibly imagine. It was almost like a real life Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, to where you get to get transported into this magical world that we've all dreamt of being a part of there.
Wow, that is mental. That is mental. Can you imagine? You had no idea it was going to be Star Wars, and then you're like, hang on, what's going on here? This is a galaxy far, far away, and you grew up as a Star Wars fan. Like, to me, that just sounds so alien. That seems like just a world away, And I'm a Star Wars fan. I do a Star Wars podcast with my mate Matt. Do you know what I mean? But it still seems so alien, if you pardon the pun. No, that's fantastic, Dominic. So what was it like working with Lucasfilm? Because like you said, mate, this is a really different process to the episodes that are mostly in production in the UK, Australia, and on set. Now, this was in the volume, right? Did you get to experience any of that, or was it set in California too?
We were in California. We were adjacent to the volume, but the first day of the makeup test with Filoni and Favreau and the amazing Deborah Chow, who's actually heading up Kenobi, while I was having the makeup test, so I'm taking all of this in. And doing the screen test, I was sort of the backdrop was sort of a moisture farm where they wanted me to reveal myself. Gekko has a blue robe and a hood, so I turned around almost like Kenobi in Episode 4, and they wanted me to just sort of spot out the ship in the sky. But as this is all going around to the left, just what caught my eye was this LED screen, which when I saw the back of it for the first time, I thought it was just going to be the interior of a spaceship, because it had all these Matrix-like plugins for every, I would say, 2 by 2 foot square. And I was just like, wow, this must be an amazing spaceship they have on the other side. My vision is absolutely perfect, and I cannot tell you how crystal clear that volume is. The joke is now, if that we ever win the lottery, I remember the big Star Wars dream is to have a Millennium Falcon in my backyard, but ideally to have that LED screen and say one of your spare rooms with maybe 13 channels, it just literally transports you to the whatever destination you want to go to. It feels so real, like more than any other IMAX film you've ever seen. It was absolutely amazing. There were mixed emotions on the first day. I mean, things have just, obviously as a fanboy in a way, George Lucas was there inside the cantina as they're placing us. That was the scene where, Carl is talking to, well, it's actually not Pedro, it was Brendan Wayne, John Wayne's grandson, about, the bounty pucks there, and et cetera. But Lucas is there with Kennedy. And all I can think about was my mind was racing in terms of the potential of being a one-of-a-kind, unique bounty hunter and where this could possibly lead in terms of, for my career, for the future, and also to make this character sort of a legacy within the universe. So it was part excitement and enjoying it minute by minute, but also at the same time, my mind was racing with just it's like the Hugh Jackman song, A Million Dreams, in terms of where and the potential that Gekko could go from being a one-of-a-kind species and bounty hunter within the universe from that point forward.
Oh, good on you, mate. And that's what it's all about. Like you said, if you get an opportunity, take it, grasp it with both hands. And you have got one now, as you say, as Gekko the Bounty Hunter. What is, obviously, we're here to talk about your plans for the character. But before we actually get into what's next for the character, why does Gekko mean so much? What does he mean to you? What does it mean to you to be able to put on that makeup and look at yourself and think, I'm not Dominic, I'm Gekko? What does that mean to you, man?
It's funny. It's taking on a deeper meaning as the months progress. I was one of 25 bounty hunters, and this is something that's sort of a lesson in life. People ask me all the time, what's your favorite Star Wars movie? By hands down, it's Empire Strikes Back, and the reason being is because of the teachings of Yoda. But now you take this situation, especially in our country right now, they're talking a very popular word is called privilege, right? Who has privilege, who doesn't have privilege, etc. 25 bounty hunters, and really little to no opportunity in less than 1 minute time. And the one thing for me is it's sort of I guess an analogy of my entire career in that sometimes you're given a small opportunity in life. And the one thing also that I think that's beautiful about the Star Wars universe is that all these characters and their own uniqueness, their own individuality, there's something special about them. There is something unique. So the one thing, what started as, hey, I'm a bounty hunter, and how exciting is that from the original 6 bounty hunters to be that and to be this imposing, amazing look that Brian Sipe created along with Joseph Puro, it's taking on a new meaning in terms of the popularity that it's gaining. And to me, it's sort of a bigger meaning to teach my sons the importance of not making excuses in life and going out there and not only following your dreams, but also at the same time helping others. When we did the campaign last year due to COVID, I toured over 40 different comic book stores. And again, I'm completely humbled that I'm not one of the stars of the show. But the one thing that really resonates is when you are kind to people, when you help others, it's amazing how that reverberates back to you so much to the point now where regardless of what the future is of Gekko, the fans have been so excited they went on and they wanted to create their own fan fiction comic of Gekko, which we're actually taking this year. And we're going to go ahead and twofold be able to go back and support small business and be able to spread that positivity of Star Wars and also the ideology of no matter if you're one of 25 or you're handed a very small opportunity in this world, there is a chance for improvement and chance to succeed as opposed to making excuses by getting out there, believing in yourself and helping others as opposed to, again, saying, okay, well, there's something wrong with this. We are all immigrants in one way or another, Italian-American, this country, unfortunately, we've had our struggles in one way or another, and everybody has had their struggle. But the most important thing is that if you believe in yourself and you work hard and you help others, a lot of amazing things can happen. And I think at the end of this, it's not so much that Gekko may be known for his character, but it might be known for a bigger movement in the real world, in the real Star Wars universe, the Star Wars story of Gekko in here on Earth, as opposed to within the universe there.
That's lovely, mate. That's lovely. And we'll talk more about the future plans of Gekko in a moment, because they sound like so interesting. Sounds like you got a fire plan there, mate. But let's just go back a wee bit and talk about, you've just dropped GL. You've just said, oh, just casually, like, yeah, George Lucas, blah, 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 blah. And whoa, hang on there, Dominic, hang on. So you've worked with George Lucas, Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni. Can you tell us any memorable quirks and any sort of something that really has stayed with you with working with those gentlemen? Because, you know, they're some of the Star Wars daddies, you know, and you've got the great grandpappy of Star Wars right there. You know, what's that like, mate?
Two elements in particular. One, I've always been a fan of Star Wars. I never necessarily got into the books. I wasn't too much into Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels. I'm watching them now just to sort of do my research, you know, with the universe, etc. And also wanted to get into the Thrawn books as well. But Lucas is just casually leaning up against the bar, talking to Favreau about the history of the Mandalorians, extensive detail, the Mandalorians. And that to me just piqued my interest in terms of how much bigger this universe is, aside from just the norm that most of us Star Wars fans know, which is, you know, Han, Luke, and Leia, and just everything more or less surrounding them, and Chewie and Lando, etc. So I thought that was very fascinating. The other thing that really stuck out to me, and I had this with Hugh Jackman as well, is just a tremendous level of energy in terms of positivity, and also being what we say here in the States is as cool as the other side of the pillow. Like basically just $100 million budget on your shoulders back in the 80s and 90s. When you had that kind of budget, say with James Cameron and during Titanic, there are legendary stories of him and say Michael Bay on his projects of screaming and yelling and, you know, firing people right on the spot. And the one thing with Favreau and Filoni and Kennedy and Lucas is just, it felt like just such a relaxed, a calm tempo. And there was no pressure. That's a beautiful sign that the story has a perfect arc and there are no conflicts in terms of the writing. And that was the one thing that I noticed was just, and that pours over to Deborah Chow, the director as well, to where it was just a good, constant, gentle pressure of focus. Everybody, what I say is that if you was a part of a Navy ship, you would want to be under their command. Just complete respect for each one of them in terms of the way the energy that set felt like. Not to mention this beautiful moment. I equate acting to sort of the Matrix, to where all of a sudden, you know, if you feel it in your mind, the world starts going away and you can create, you know, whether you want to jump or shoot or, have a superpower or what have you. There was just that nothing was more beautiful than the experience on this set than having the universe going away and really genuinely feeling like you were in the Star Wars universe. And I felt that for many days while I was there, even with, such a little side character role that Gekko had there.
That is incredible. And honestly, just listening to, I was just watching, John and George just having a chat by the bar, just about the Mandos, and just being able to, in full Gekko gear, honestly, I wasn't even there, and I'm starting to feel like I was there, and I kind of wish I was. If John's listening, me and Luke will happily come and be a couple of bounty hunters for the next series, if you don't mind. But you've mentioned, obviously, now, let's talk about the future, or what is next. What's the plan for the character then? Because you're obviously clearly very passionate about the character, as well you should be, and we love to hear it. So we know you've got plans. So can we let's go into it. What's happening with the future of Gekko the Bounty Hunter?
So during my tour last year, I didn't expect much of a draw, but all of a sudden I get to Sioux City, Iowa, and there's about 200 people waiting for me, not to mention the mayor of the city. Nice. It's the center of the country. And he declares July 18th, 2020 as Dominic Pace Gekko Day. So I brought my 11-year-old son. And I'm looking at him, and I'm just all of a sudden looking at him, the NBC is there and CBS, some of the major networks. And I said, They must know at this point, in terms of now the momentum that this character is gaining. Then I go down to Tennessee, another stop. They give me the key to the city, and another 100 people are there wanting my autograph and, wanting to, just come and take a photo, etc. So for me, a lot of times with these things, with major studios, when you go rogue and you sort of start, doing your own campaign and your tour and signings, etc., usually you get a letter to where they say, hey, either one or the other. You can say, we want you back on set, or hey, you need to stop. So what I am under the impression of, knowing now with the fan fiction comic, is that I think they genuinely appreciate the enthusiasm, the branding, the promotion of the show. For me, my whole history is squeaky clean. I'm just like so many of you gentlemen and ladies, I'm a Star Wars fan, just for heart, just by heart since I was 5 years old. But I take out a quote from what Funko Pop said to me, in that they want to see what happens. So I think in a way this is something this has never before seen, sort of a trail for an actor from such a franchise so big, in that they want to see sort of the progression and the popularity and the momentum. And for me, I'm just running with it. And we're hoping by August, after this campaign, and after they see, obviously, the passion from a lot of the fans in America, and also, I think, the demand with the comic book, hopefully overseas, with England and Germany have been big fans, as well as many countries or areas in South America there. We're hopeful that we'll get a call from them in a positive way. And ideally, in a perfect world, we'd like to return with the Book of Boba there.
Oh, mate, that sounds class. That sounds absolute class. Dominic, you've mentioned Deborah Chow and Kenobi. Yeah. Is there any chance that you think, do you know what? Gekko, he loves a bit of Kenobi. He's gonna show up in the Kenobi series. Obviously, there's only so much you can say, but I didn't hear you say you got a letter saying no, stop doing what you're doing.
And there's the Book of Boba Fett, like you say, a bounty hunter show. Yeah,
I mean, for me, I've said in a few interviews, the ideal storyline I would love, at least from Vader, from that episodic, from the 4 episodes. In a perfect world, for me, Vader would commission a series of bounty hunters to go after Kenobi. And Kenobi would just have a little ass whipping with a handful of them, whether he destroys them or not. In a perfect world, yes. You have to understand that we were not seen dying in episode 3, but I will go as far as to say that they had no plans. And when I go back to the story I was telling you just in regards to life, in that sometimes when life doesn't have plans, you make plans, you make that opportunity, you make the dream. Mm. So we literally were starting from the ground here, as opposed to any plans that they had or any momentum that they thought, similar to, say, maybe Boba. Obviously, Lucas would not have thrown him down the Sarlacc pit had he not known how popular Boba would have become over the years. He would have created a spinoff right then and there and had Boba fly away. So it's sort of the same thing, in that we need to put in the elbow grease, the hard work right now, and sort of do that grassroots marketing like we've been doing. And, look, we're still young, or 45 years old. I think we've got a great future ahead. And I think as long as we continue to spread that positivity, and also with all the Star Wars content coming out, I'm sure you'll be seeing another Gekko sighting officially in the years to come there.
That's what we like to hear, isn't it, mate?
Absolutely. I was actually going to say, Dominic, before we went on recording, we were like, mate, when you come into England next, and when are we going to go to the pub together? Because that's going to happen. Isn't it, mate? I'm not just putting pressure on because we're recording right now, but we are going to have a few cheeky pints together, share some stories. And like I said, Dominic's going to be like, man, I missed that Comic-Con. those Star Wars sessions, boys.
I miss Mando's season forecasting for this.
We were just partying too hard. I can't wait. My grandfather was one of the greatest inspirations to me. I'm sure, just like that generation for you, the heroism that so many members of the English army had to undergo. I mean, through obviously, with Nazi Germany, et cetera. So the one thing I wanted to visit was obviously Churchill's bunker and a little bit of World War II history in southern England, where my grandfather took off to Normandy Beach there. He was at Utah Beach with so many amazing soldiers from England as well. So I definitely want to honor him. But most importantly, I'm sure we'll also be getting that pint, and also be attending a few Comic-Cons around that area, I'm sure, as the years progress.
Sounds good to me. What a way to honour as well. Whilst you're over here, check out some of the beautiful sites we've got in the UK. And if you're there, and if you can manage to honour your grandfather, that's what it's all about. And we'll happily take you up on that pint as well, my friend. But Gekko comic. Yeah. Who I'm sitting here thinking, well, I fancy a copy of that, so I'm going to pick one up for the listeners, because you're obviously talking about putting in the hard work, putting in the graft, putting in the effort, and you've mentioned the comic a few times now. Obviously it's about Gekko, but what is the kind of crux of the story, and when and where can they pick it up from?
Sure. There was a fan in Maryland who always just wanted to be a writer. And he approached me early on in the campaign, probably about a year and a half ago. And he said, do me a favor. He says, your Wikipedia, Gekko, he said, I'm an administrator over there. I would love to, if it's okay, establish sort of a backstory for Gekko. I have an idea of the name of the planet that I think he's from. Another gentleman in Colorado said, look, this is the ship that I think Gekko has. It's nothing that's pretty or sexy like, Queen Amidala's, but I think it's, a little bit rugged, almost like Gekko's look. So I had all these fans, and an illustrator came out from Romania, and then a colorist from Brazil. It's just sort of a worldwide effort. They all sort of came together to want to put together the story of what happens after Navarro. So he is about to return to his planet, where he comes into a little bit of a bounty conflict and meets an old friend. This is actually going to be available on GekkoTheBountyHunter.com beginning as short of actually in 1 week. So at early March. We're expecting that, and it'll only be $10 shipping out to overseas. And it comes autographed. There's 4 different variant covers, but it's a 16-page total comic. And I'm very grateful to the fan base for wanting to explore Gekko's backstory through the fans themselves who created this for me. And I can't tell you how grateful I am, and I appreciate everyone's support.
That's amazing, mate. Because I know you mentioned you're going to be doing another tour, aren't you, this year? I know you did your tour last year. You're doing another one this year. You're going to Hawaii even, so not even just mainland USA. And who knows, by the looks of things, maybe that tour might include the UK. Let's see how this year goes. I know it's all a bit crazy. But yeah, any favourite places, by the way, while you've been doing your tours all around your home country?
Oh, absolutely. Well, this year is going to be a little more historic. Last year was pop culture. Who doesn't love Elvis Presley? And I went everything from Tupelo, Mississippi, which was his humble beginnings in this sort of Depression era house, which his father started. My God, if you blew, that house could probably crack down. I don't know how they got through it with the tornadoes. To going to Graceland was absolutely amazing. They have kept the interior the same way that he had it, with all the tacky gold and the big shag carpets, and even carpets on the ceiling. It was absolutely amazing. Not to mention,
wow.
Unfortunately, here in the States, we like to eat, and unfortunately, it shows. But different parts of the country have just the most amazing food. Down in the South, they have what's called a chicken fried steak with the country gravy. Oh my God, it's just the greatest thing you could ever try. You'll be taking a nap for the next 5 days. But this year, going back a little bit earlier, our original explorers in the 1800s was Lewis and Clark. And part of our path is going to take us through Missouri and also the state of North Dakota, which is where they spent the first winter on their exploration to get to the west through the Missouri River. So I'm going to be taking the kids to a few museums there. But some of the sites are just absolutely amazing all throughout the country. And what was better than to take my son to Disney World last year? They stayed open through COVID in Florida, and that was just a great way to celebrate sort of this little mini victory for, again, putting Gekko on the map in so many ways, and hopefully a bright future ahead.
Oh, mate, that is fantastic. I love the sound of these things. I've been to America a couple times. I know Matt's been to the States. I've been to California, New York, Florida. I've done a stop off for about 2 hours in Minneapolis airport. I've gone to Vegas as well. But even just hearing those places, those are the kind of places that you're like, as a European, you do only see on TV. It almost seems mythical, right? And I suppose it's similar when, I've got friends in California when they visit us and they see these just normal British towns and they're like, wow, it's so weird. It's so different. Yeah, it's quaint. Now you mentioned your son, Dominic, and whatnot, and I know you've got from the seams things, you got a very good relationship with your son. And life, like you said, you do have to seize the day a little bit. You have to chase the coins. You have to do what you need to do to get things done. And obviously you're doing this tour, but it's not just for the bounty hunter. It's not just for yourself. It's for your family as well, isn't it?
Without question. Look, I know that there's a lot of discussion right now in our country in regards to relieving student loan debt, but I come from a background in New York where, if you want that college education, you need to pay for it. And one of the things, I'm taking my older son, I have two sons, Dante, who's 15, my younger is Bennett, who is 12. He may be joining us for half the tour. But my older son, to not only teach him about work ethic, but also this is personally for his college education. Like you gentlemen in England, I'm one of those guys where I'm happy with just a pint and a Subway sandwich, and I'm okay the rest of my life in a one-bedroom. But for him, I just really, what breaks my heart about the teenagers at this time right now is that they did not have the pleasure to enjoy high school the way that we did, with sports and, just the parties and the girlfriends, et cetera. All of this Zoom stuff is really, to me, at the end of the day, as much you can have a million watch parties to your heart's content, but at the same time, it's not real life. So for me, nothing would please me more. He is a straight-A student. He goes to a very accredited high school due to his grades on the west side here in Los Angeles by an accredited university, UCLA. It's a prep school. And the one great thing that I can give to him, the greatest gift, is not only the lesson of Gekko, which is what we've spoken about in terms of believing in yourself, no matter what the opportunity is that presents itself in life, but also to take care of that college education because he's a good kid. He's not entitled. He's not spoiled. And he's been such a great son to my wife and I there.
That's incredible to hear. As a father as well, it's lovely to hear what you'll do for your family and for your sons as well. And let's face it, your sons must think it's pretty cool to have a bounty hunter as a father.
Without question, I think it would make a great movie someday because, they do see the behind the scenes of all the, the odd jobs in between one gig or the other. So they see the struggle. They see how difficult it is. But I'd like to believe at the end of my time here that they would be proud in terms of what I've achieved. And I hope that it inspires them. The one thing I've told Dante, I've had positions before to where I've been able to make six figures in terms of a salary. But the one thing that I've tried to instill in them is to make sure you do what makes you happy. It's not about the money in life, but most importantly, what makes you happy. But, when you find that, to make sure that you are staying active with it, because, in anything in life, it takes a lot of perseverance in order to do what you love and to make a living off of it.
That's words to live by there. And no, I can't argue with that. And I know Luke will think the same. If you want something, you've got to work for it. But when you get there, cherish it as well. On the comic book, that's pretty much the last one for me is you said that the first run is out now. Are there plans for? I guess it's down to how well it sells or the popularity. But are there plans to do future series of the comic book? And can me and Luke feature in them?
You know what? Remind me maybe next year. We definitely left a cliffhanger in the comic without question. But for right now, this is a one-off. In a perfect world, we just love to Disney to see the level of enthusiasm, to see the draw that the character is receiving, and to hopefully get that invite back. Not only with the live action, but hopefully with the figures. I think the icing on the cake for me, and I mentioned it last year as well. I think any Star Wars fan, you'd love to. Be a part of the universe, but also at the same time, the fans have been amazing as far as creating so many custom figures of Gekko, from Black Series to Funko Pop to mini Lego figures. But in a perfect world, they were pretty short, in my opinion, in terms of the way that they created the Mandalorian characters. There were only about 5 figures that they created, more or less, and they did about 1 million different versions of Grogu. But I'd like to see them go back to the originality of the side characters, specifically Gekko, hopefully in the years to come.
I was thinking exactly that recently, I was like, man, and the demand for Mandalorian stuff is so high, but it seems like there's not as much supply, whereas there was almost oversupply on certain other projects in Star Wars. You think Solo, Last Jedi and stuff. I don't know. It does seem a little odd. It's not like, when I grew up, Dominic, I grew up during the prequel era. There was an action figure for like Dex. In Dex's Diner, the guy's just flipping pancakes and knows where Jango Fett lives. Yeah, I would love to see more of that. There's definitely demand for it, I think.
I think they took a little hit on the sequel trilogy, and I think that's the reasoning why they probably wanted to be a little more conservative. But it's heartbreaking because, again, this was my time. So I'm like, hey, I don't care about the sequel trilogy. Mandalorian's better. So. I care about it, but you know what I mean. As far as the sales results, I think obviously that demand is still there.
Yeah.
So, Well, I love the look of the bounty hunter, but you mentioned Grogu, and I've got to say, listen, I like Gekko, I like you, Dominic. You're a good guy. If you hurt a hair on that little dude's head, we're coming for you.
I don't blame you. It's so adorable, and hopefully it won't be the last of seeing him there. Really excited to see where the Star Wars universe is taken. But how grateful are we for John and Dave, though, in terms of really just having their finger on the fan base's mind and our hearts in terms of knowing what we like and enjoy. I tell you, I grew up in Generation X, and we loved He-Man and Thundercats. And the one thing is now, because they did such an amazing job, we just wish that Favreau would take over every one of our childhood franchises there.
No, mate, honestly, I feel the exact same. It is such a well-produced show, and I won't lie to you, 2020 was horrendously difficult for so many people in such a vast amount of ways, unfortunately. But The Mandalorian Season 2 was just, it felt like just such a relief and such escapism, man. And to have it so well received, especially the season finale, mate, like it was just amazing. It was just what I needed. And it was a little pick me up, which is great. Now, we've mentioned the films briefly. Dominic, I'm going to ask you a bit of a cheeky question to wrap things up here, mate. Do you have, you said Empire Strikes Back is your favorite Star Wars film. What is, mate? And you can be honest. There's no hate here, mate. This is a safe space. What's your least favorite Star Wars film?
Oh, yeah. I had a problem with Episode 8. I just felt, I don't think it's an offense to Ryan. I think the issue is that, my wife and I have this rule. We say, laughing because she's in the other room, but whoever's cooking in the kitchen, I don't want opinions in terms of how much more salt I should use, how much, adjustment. We don't overlap each other, because the problem is then it ruins the recipe. So for me, I would have loved to have just seen JJ continue on, no matter what his decision was with Episode 8. So I had an issue with that, because I felt like I saw, an abrupt change in the storyline, and I would have loved to just seen what JJ would have done with that there, to be honest. So for me, it's that. But again, the one thing I do want to mention is I'm just not a fan. I actually went off Twitter for a while, because the one thing for me is to never hurt anyone else's feelings. Even politically, look, we all have different opinions. But the most important thing is to say, hey, this is my opinion, but never to hurt anyone, any Star Wars fans' feelings, because they may have a different opinion than yours. That might be somebody else's hero in that film. So it's not my place to, you draw the line in terms of criticism. But for me personally, that would be the answer.
Great answer, mate. Great answer. And thank you for sharing. And thank you for being so honest as well, mate. Because, yeah, it is. Well, and that's what I think is, dare I say, a bit unique about our show, is that we have loads of people who listen to the show, but also, patrons, people who are in our little community that we're so grateful for. We have people who adore The Last Jedi, and we have people who hate it. But Matt and I try to approach things in a balanced way where, look, we're here for a bit of fun at the end of the day. We're just having a laugh. And that's what it's all about, I think. Matty boy, I know you got a cheeky little final question, haven't you, mate?
Well, I do. This episode of SWS is all about bounty hunters, hence why we've got the one bounty hunter who could take down Luke Skywalker on the show. Gekko aside, who is your favourite Star Wars bounty hunter?
If I can say, because I can give a shout out to England in a way, and I don't know any inside information. But aside from Boba, obviously that's just the obvious choice. I think for all of us, it was probably one of the coolest figures. I would love to give a shout out and hopefully a rehash of his career to Vinnie Jones. I think would be an amazing Dengar. But the one thing for me is I just loved, they had a middleweight English boxer who played that role. Forgive me for not remembering his name. Rest in peace. But Dengar, there was just something so special about how scrappy. And again, the one thing for me is just blue collar, dirty, get your hands dirty kind of a guy with the, a big, large blaster. So I would say Dengar was pretty up there in the ranks there for me.
You were in a film with Vinnie Jones, weren't you? Was it The Midnight Man as well, was it called?
Yeah, some amazing English actors. Will Kemp, who we actually became friends with on the set of Van Helsing. He played Wolfman. And also Steve Valentine, who's also an amazing English actor. Along with Vinnie Jones, Doug Jones, William Forsythe. If you gentlemen get a chance, the two films I would recommend from my career would be The Midnight Man, I'm billed about 8th or 9th, and then also starring in Anonymous Killers, which is on Amazon right now. It's a great sort of a film in regards to just the social justice system and also the criminal justice system in our society today. They're a very interesting piece there.
Sweet.
Wow.
Written and noted. I'm a film dude, so I've written them down and noted.
Thank you.
That's lovely, mate. Dominic, this has been an absolute dream, mate. It's been great talking to Gekko the Bounty Hunter. And we'll tell people, by the time this episode comes out, it will only be a few days away from the release of the comic. That's GekkoTheBountyHunter.com, right?
Yes, correct. And then Gekko the Hunter on Twitter, Dominic Pace 1 on Instagram, and also Lair of the Gekko on Facebook for all the updates in regards to the touring dates and appearances and event confirmations. There are RSVPs for everybody. Thank you so much.
You're a legend, Dominic. Thank you so much for coming on to our show, for talking Mandalorian, talking, George Lucas, Jon Favreau, all these amazing names, and of course your experience. And listen, mate, I can't wait to see more Gekko. It's gonna be good crack. It's gonna be great.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you all, and my best to all the listeners, especially over in England during this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, mate. Best wishes.
Thank you, Dominic.